Hello and welcome to Inside Europe, the weekly current affairs podcast and radio programme from DW, Germany's international broadcaster. I'm Kate Laycock in Bonn. This week on the show, a Budapest court has sentenced the German anti-fascist Maja T to 8 years in prison. But given a German court ruled Maja T's extradition illegal, what questions does this case raise? Then, Epstein, the European fallout. A British lord, a Norwegian princess, a Slovak national security advisor, and a former French culture minister find their connections to the millionaire sex offender in the spotlight. We've got the overview here on Inside Europe. As the 25-year-old German anti-fascist Maja T was led out of a Budapest court on Wednesday, family, friends and supporters stood and chanted their support. Maja T, who is non-binary and uses the pronouns they-them in English, was sentenced to 8 years without parole after a Hungarian judge found that they had been involved in violent attacks on alleged right-wing extremists in Budapest in 2023.
Maja T travelled to Budapest with a group of people who were accused of carrying out 5 violent attacks over 2 days on people who they considered to be neo-Nazis or from the neo-Nazi scene.
That's Matt Moore, who covers German extremism for DW News. He's one of 2 colleagues whose expertise I've tapped this week in order to better understand the implications of this case. The other colleague is Laura Saplonsai, a reporter with DW's Hungarian department. She's been following the case from a Hungarian perspective, and I'm extremely grateful to Laura for sharing her vast database of interview material with me in preparation for this segment.
I was able to speak to 2 victims who were a couple, a man and a woman, and they said that in February 2023, on a weekend evening, they were attacked on their way home. They lost consciousness and suffered serious injuries. For example, the man's cheekbone was broken. I also asked them whether they had attended a fair right event in Hungary that afternoon. They did not deny being there, but they raised the question of whether, even if they attended such an event, it justified being attacked.
The event in question was the so-called Day of Honour, an annual neo-Nazi gathering which attracts thousands of participants from Hungary and other countries each year. Maja T was found to have been part of a group of around 20 organised leftists from Germany and other countries who travelled to Budapest and who carried out violent physical assaults on people they perceived as neo-Nazis attending the rally. Other alleged members of the so-called Budapest complex either have been or are currently being tried in Germany. Maja T is the only one of the accused to have been extradited to Hungary. And that is where this story starts to get complex, not least because of the circumstances of Maja T's extradition, which the German Constitutional Court ruled to have been illegal. Here's DW's Matt Moore again.
This is an interesting judgment to read because the word failing or failure appears throughout, and essentially the judges found that Maja T's fundamental rights could not be guaranteed in the Hungarian judicial system. And they said that the court in Berlin did not do its job of assessing the situation in the Hungarian system. It said that the court in Berlin took the word of the Hungarian authorities blindly and that it ought to have been much more rigorous in its assessment of the potential conditions there. There are a number of aspects that they were really focused on. One of them was Maja T is non-binary. Could Maja T's safety in the Hungarian prison system be assured?
So, from the start, the question of whether or not Maja T, as a non-binary queer person, could expect dignified and humane treatment within the Hungarian system has been at the fore. Last year, my colleague Laura Saplonsai was granted permission to interview Maja T in prison.
So we filmed in a room where prisoners meet their family members and lawyers. And Maja was brought in wearing handcuffs, but they were removed for the interview. They said that they have very little human contact in prison, less than what European prison rules require. According to them, prison conditions are bad, which is why Maja T went on a hunger strike in the last summer. As an example, Maja T mentioned that they had to strip naked in front of the guards every day. And during the interview, they said that this was eventually changed, and now Maja T only have to strip naked twice a week. However, the prison authorities claim that they are acting according to the law.
Another question is whether or not Maja T could ever have expected to be given a fair trial in Hungary. Their father says no.
I met him, Wolfram Jaros, twice. He said that he is very worried because Prime Minister Orbán classified anti-fascist organizations as terrorist organizations. And Maja T's father would have preferred Maja to be tried in Germany.
In 2025, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán swiftly moved to follow Donald Trump in classifying Antifa as a terrorist organisation. Now, Antifa is notoriously difficult to classify since it's a movement comprising loosely affiliated autonomous groups rather than an organisation. Antifa Ost, the grouping to which Maja T allegedly belongs, is named as a terrorist organisation by both countries. Laura Saplonsai.
Maja said that they hold anti-fascist views, but are not a member of any organisation. They talked about having been born in a city in Germany where neo-Nazi marches were held on Hitler's birthday, and about how they spend a lot of time thinking about how society could be made better and more just. For them, this is what anti-fascism means.
In the Budapest courtroom, the Hungarian prosecution was unable to produce incriminating witness statements or DNA evidence. The case rested on grainy security camera footage in which the prosecutor alleged Maja T could be seen together with other attackers. The defence argued that the person supposed to be Maja T was not carrying a weapon.
You have this one person who has basically been dragged through the Hungarian court system and will never get a fair trial, really, because of the political environment in Hungary, because of the questions about the quality of the evidence against them. It's a show trial, that's what their supporters say, and they probably have a point.
Now that a verdict has been reached, Maja T's team are focusing their efforts on having them transferred into the German penitential system. The Hungarian authorities have signalled that they are open to such a solution, but this can only happen once Maja T's appeal has been heard and decided. In the meantime, several German cities saw leftists take to the streets in solidarity with Maja T after the verdict was announced, and various politicians from the Linke, SPD and Green parties have expressed their desire to see Maja T returned to Germany in view of the illegality of their extradition.
No citizen of a country should be extradited without being able to exhaust their full legal rights. And that didn't happen in Maja T's case. It's a worrying sign for other people when courts and the judicial system functions in a way that doesn't guarantee the rights of citizens. And I think that is why every effort will be made for Maja T to, at the very least, serve out their sentence in Germany close to their family.
My thanks to DW's Matt Moore and Laura Saplonsai for helping me to unpick the complicated case of Maja T from both a German and Hungarian perspective. We'll be linking to their own coverage in our show notes. This week, survivors of the millionaire child abuser and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein released a statement in which they said, quote, "Once again, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed, while the men who abused us remain hidden and protected." And arguably, that is the only story that anyone should be telling right now. However, this is Inside Europe, and the European political fallout from the latest Epstein file dump has been considerable. So, to give you an overview, we asked 4 correspondents to summarise the headlines in their particular part of the world. My colleague Nick Martin begins with the British angle.
In the UK this week, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been severely damaged by fresh allegations involving Lord Peter Mandelson, a key figure in Labour governments at the turn of the millennium. At issue is Starmer's decision to appoint Mandelson as US ambassador last year, following President Donald Trump's return to the White House. Lawmakers have demanded full disclosure about the decision after Starmer admitted he knew about Mandelson's friendship with Epstein at the time of the appointment.
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister?
Yes, it did.
Mandelson was dismissed in September following the release of the first tranche of Epstein papers last year. The latest cache, however, is far more damaging. In newly released emails, Mandelson appears to share confidential government insights with Epstein, including market-sensitive details about a €500 billion bailout following the 2008-9 financial crisis, and around the resignation of former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown. The emails show Mandelson even lobbied US officials on banking rules at Epstein's request. Bank statements, meanwhile, suggest Epstein transferred tens of thousands of dollars to accounts linked to Mandelson or his husband. The Metropolitan Police have launched a full criminal investigation into alleged misconduct in public office. Mandelson has resigned from the ruling Labour Party and stepped down as a lawmaker in the UK's upper House of Lords. Starmer, whose leadership is now viewed by some lawmakers as in peril, has ordered the release of government files related to the appointment.
I'm Rob Cameron in Prague, and the fallout from the release of the Epstein files has now hit Central Europe after Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico confirmed his national security advisor Miroslav Lajčák had resigned following the publication of transcripts of messages with the late sex offender. The latest data release included texts showing Lajčák, then Slovak foreign minister, joking with Epstein about women and a planned meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in 2018. After Epstein sent him a photo, Lajčák replied, "Why don't you invite me for these games? I would take that girl," evidently referring to someone in the photo. "Who wouldn't?" Epstein wrote back. "You can have them both. I'm not possessive, and they're sisters." Lajčák has denied all memory of these conversations and any wrongdoing. He told Slovak radio he felt like an idiot after reading the messages. Prime Minister Fico said the attacks on Lajčák were nothing more than an attack on him.
I'm John Lawrenson in France. In the newly opened files, we also see ex-culture minister and current head of the prestigious Arab World Institute, Jacques Lang, posing with the sex offender in front of the Louvre Pyramid. Lang and his family befriended the millionaire. His daughter Caroline even founded an art purchasing company with him. Based in the Virgin Islands, its accounts were credited with $1.4 million, according to the French investigative website Mediapart. It was all perfectly legal, she says. She has now resigned as Director General of the Independent Film and Television Producers Union. As for her father Jacques, the former socialist minister said he had no knowledge of crimes until the revelations in the press. Another famous politician, this time on the right, is President Macron's former finance minister Bruno Le Maire, who visited the sex offender in New York.
I'm Lars Bavanger in Norway, where the future Queen, Crown Princess Mette-Marit, is now facing intense public scrutiny after it emerged she had had extensive email correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein between 2011 and 2014. This goes far beyond what she disclosed in 2019, when she said that the convicted sex offender was merely an acquaintance. These emails suggest a closer friendship, with her calling the disgraced financier her crazy friend who tickles my brain. We now also know that the king's daughter-in-law spent several days in Epstein's Florida mansion and met him on several occasions, including in Oslo. The fact that Crown Princess Mette-Marit did not put all the cards on the table back in 2019 means her reputation has taken a serious knock. In a fresh opinion poll, 4 in 10 Norwegians said she should not become queen. Meanwhile, her son from a previous relationship, Marius Høiby, has this week faced an Oslo court charged with 38 offences, including 4 counts of rape. He denies the most serious charges, and the case is set to run for 7 weeks. With much of the Epstein files yet to be released, the royal family will be hoping that there are no further revelations to come.
This is Inside Europe, and I'm Kate Laycock in Germany.
When headlines get louder, we go deeper.
Say hello to Berlin Briefing,
Your guide to Germany's impact on the world. Between East and West, autocrats and democrats, Germany's whole system is under stress.
pressure from all sides.
And the world around Germany is getting more dangerous.
Is democracy glitching? Too much noise? Too little clarity?
We decode what it means for you.
From Berlin to right where you are.
It's all in Berlin Briefing on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
Just time for one last story before we go to break. It's about increasing Islamophobia in Russia. As Levi Bridges reports, tensions are rising in part because of the Kremlin's increasingly close relationship with the Russian Orthodox Church.
In a recent video posted on YouTube, a young woman wearing a blue headscarf kneels on the grass and prays in Moscow's Gorky Park. The woman filming her is clearly not happy. Muslims in Russia are frequently harassed and even arrested under strict anti-extremism laws. Russia has the largest Muslim population in Europe, but the Russian government frequently projects the Orthodox Church as an inherent part of Russia's national identity. In many parts of Russia, though, like Chechnya, people have practiced Islam for centuries. Over the last year, I've been talking with young Muslims in Russia. Many tell me they identify with Islam more as a part of their ethnicity rather than a religion they follow. They didn't want to give their names or locations in Russia because just identifying yourself publicly as having ties to Islam could potentially get you labeled as an extremist.
Okay, хорошо.
I talked to a woman over the phone who tells me that growing up, she studied the Quran with her family. But when she became an adult, she decided not to follow any religion. She says many young Russians nowadays are moving away from religion. They're more focused on earning a living, about inflation. But Islam is still a big part of many Russians' lives. A Muslim woman in Russia who studied theology tells me that informal women's groups meet all around Russia to study the Quran together. But these days, they're being more discreet. When new people want to join, there's always suspicion, she says, because the women fear that the authorities might have sent someone to surveil them. Russia's counterterrorism laws are broad enough that the authorities could label any informal Islamic gathering as suspicious. She says the government fears any group whose beliefs run counter to the Kremlin's ideology because they might one day challenge the state's control. For Orthodox Christians, though, the situation is very different. In Moscow, a crew from Russian state television films an Orthodox priest standing in a public square and praying with believers. Not long ago, during the Soviet Union, religious practices were suppressed. Churches and mosques were destroyed. But after the Soviet Union ended, many Russians embraced religion, and the Orthodox Church started playing a fundamental role in Russian society. Sergei Chapnin formerly worked with the church in Moscow and is now with Fordham University. He argues the Orthodox Church consolidated its power and influence in post-Soviet Russia by pursuing an ideological alliance with the political elite.
Church officials were doing their best to convince the state that the Orthodox tradition should be the basis of the new Russian society. And they succeeded, especially after Putin became president.
Chapnin argues the church and state collaborated to reconstruct the more conservative Orthodox version of Russia that existed a century ago. In the past decade, hundreds of churches have been built all over Russia. But not all Russians want these places of worship. In one Moscow park, locals have been protesting for years against the planned construction of a new church. One local woman tells me they want to preserve their neighborhood's green space from development. She says, we told them, let's just find a new, more neutral building site where the church won't be a symbol of conflict, but instead one of unity. Vakhtang Kipshidze is the vice spokesman for the church. He says the real problem here is that Moscow is a huge city without a lot of free space.
We are investing very much effort in finding plots for churches which would be acceptable both for believers and for the people living in neighborhood.
In the end, the construction project moved forward. Efforts to persuade Moscow's authorities to build more mosques, however, have been rejected. It's estimated that the capital is home to at least 2 million Muslims, but the city only has 4 mosques. Consequently, many have to travel long distances or even pray outside. Cell phone videos posted online show hundreds of Muslims praying together on the street in Moscow. There's no other place for them to go. In another, 2 Russians argue over whether a young Muslim man kneeling in a children's playground should be allowed to pray there. One of the Muslim women I spoke to says life still goes on for some, even despite the intolerance.
Она приходила со своими детьми гулять в парк.
She tells me last year, she remembers watching a Muslim woman walking with her kids in a city park, just drinking coffee in a place where families go to fly kites. It kind of surprised her. Xenophobia is on the rise, she says, and it's only getting worse. But for a moment, this woman was being herself, alone, and walking without her husband, just enjoying the day, putting her own comfort first. Levi Bridges, DW.
Just a quick reminder of our feedback address, insideeurope@dw.com. Welcome back to Inside Europe, the weekly current affairs podcast and radio programme from DW, Germany's international broadcaster. I'm Kate Laycock in Bonn. Let's start in the Arctic, once a region of peaceful multinational scientific collaboration, but alas, no more. The northern polar region has become a stage for strategic ambition, currently personified by Presidents Trump and Putin. The stakes, therefore, were high as top decision-makers, scientists and indigenous peoples' representatives gathered in Tromsø, Norway, for the annual Arctic Frontiers Conference this week. Our Norwegian-born correspondent Lars Bavanger was there and sent us this report.
I'm down at Tromsø Harbour, and right next to me is one of Norway's biggest and newest Coast Guard vessels, Bjørnøya. This one is patrolling the waters up here in the Arctic, as this far-flung part of the world has very much become the centre of geopolitical tension. The Norwegian host of the Arctic Frontiers Conference used to apply the tagline, High North, Low Tension. That is certainly no longer the case. Front and centre at debates here between top politicians, including EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre and Greenland's Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt, is how to relate to both Russia's and the USA's design on the region.
My name's Gunhild Haagensen-Gjørv, and I'm a professor in security studies and geopolitics at the UiT, the Arctic University of Norway. Now you see the United States and Russia are almost on the same page about how to perhaps divide the world. So we need to think about that American interests may coincide with Russia for the time being, and that puts pressure on us to think differently about our relationships with different countries.
What do you think Putin in Moscow is thinking about all this going on?
Well, first, I think he just has the popcorn steadily coming. You know, he's just watching what we're doing. I think Russia is very happy that Trump's pulling the attention away. And he probably crosses his finger that as long as that happens, he can just continue. And he's just throwing bodies into the Ukrainian war.
Cooperation between the 8 Arctic states began in earnest 30 years ago with the founding of the Arctic Council here in Tromsø. Back then, climate change and sustainable resource management were key issues. Russia, by far the largest Arctic nation, was kicked out in 2022 over Ukraine. Now, some here fear the future of this region looks set to be shaped in the US Ministry of War. Here's geopolitical analyst Klaus Dodds from Middlesex University.
President Trump's behaviour over the last 12 months has been catastrophic for Arctic states, particularly smaller Arctic states. We've seen the Arctic now fragment and shatter into a European Arctic, a North American Arctic, and a Russian-Asian Arctic. It's going to be very difficult to put that all back together again, thanks in part to President Putin, but Donald Trump has not helped. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that conflict is a possibility if there is a miscalculation, an accident that leads to something else. The Arctic is really becoming centre stage for a suite of rivalries and struggles for access, for control, and indeed exploitation.
Making sure they don't trample on the needs, concerns and rights of indigenous people.
Exploitation is something the people of Greenland have, of course, been thinking about a lot lately. Representatives from there have been presenting a strong united front at this conference. Maja T is a Greenlandic politician and MP in the Danish parliament for the Inuit Ataqatigiit party.
The indigenous population in Greenland is the majority, and we're quite resilient. We have the harsh nature, but we've also been fighting for our rights for decades, and we're going to fight for many decades to come. And therefore, I actually think the stubbornness of a Inuk woman is not something you should underestimate.
But has it become a more difficult position for the indigenous population with the situation we see today compared to, say, 5 years ago?
No, not necessarily. I think it depends on whether we do our work in a good manner. The worst we can do in this situation is to do nothing. So therefore, I think it's important to make sure that the Greenlandic government, the Danish government, and also EU is stepping up and also speeding up their activities in Greenland.
Now, President Trump might have pulled back from his threat of using force to grab Greenland, but does that now mean business as usual? Well, I'm off to ask Greenland's Foreign Minister, Vivian Motzfeldt. Lars Bavanger from Deutsche Welle. Now that Trump has pulled back from threatening military force, can you relax? And also, in your meeting with the Americans, what is your impression of what they actually do want now?
I would say that when we enter this meeting in Washington, I enter a room where you have a feeling of that you want to find solutions. And in that meeting, we decided to make this high-level working group. The working group has already met last week and already scheduled the next meeting. So it gives you a good hope. We are in a better place just for 3 weeks ago. Now we have direct communication, and now we are on a track on diplomacy. But I also think that it's very important to give this working group an not disturbed environment so they can do their job in a good way.
Now, Russia has been a challenge to the Arctic Cooperation for some years now, yet few had envisaged a time when the US could no longer be counted on. Yet the long-term challenge for this region, and of course for the rest of the world, remains climate change. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average. No nation, Arctic or not, can afford to take its eyes off what's happening here. Lars Bavanger, DW, Tromsø.
An important warning there. But in situations of perma-crisis, attention is a very hard thing to keep and maintain. And that's where I think that art can come in. By gesturing to something timeless and universal, art has an almost unique power to reclaim human agency and dignity from the relentless onslaught of news headlines. And nowhere is this more apparent at the moment than in a music project titled Daughters of Donbas, Songs of Stolen Children, which seeks to give voice to the estimated 20,000 children that Russia has abducted from occupied Ukrainian territories. The project is led by the Ukrainian-Canadian singer, human rights advocate and journalist Mariska, and features a young flautist named Lisa, herself rescued from abduction. Arts journalist Brendan O'Shea reports on the transformation of grief and loss into testimony and the insistence that the world listen, remember and act before it's too late.
It was February 2022 when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, 4 years later, one Ukrainian musician is confronting one of the least visible crimes of the war, the mass abduction of children from occupied territories. Thousands of Ukrainian children have been taken from their homes, transferred across borders and absorbed into Russian institutions. Many have their names, language and identity erased. In response, the singer, composer and journalist Mariska has created a music project called Daughters of Donbas, Songs of Stolen Children. Mariska is also a mother of 4 and a recipient of the Amnesty International Peace Prize. For her, music is not an escape from politics, it's a direct response to it.
I am Ukrainian, and no matter where I live in my life, I will always be Ukrainian. And everything that happened in my land with my people, it will always be in my heart, and it always will be priority for me. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Daughters of Donbas is a contemporary acoustic project rooted in Ukrainian folk traditions, chambers songwriting, and testimony. But this is not an historical reconstruction. It's a work of witness responding to events still unfolding. At its center are two musicians. One is Mariška herself. The other is Lisa, a 19-year-old flautist and folk instrumentalist who performs without her surname. Lisa was 16 when she was abducted from the besieged city of Mariupol. Lisa's relationship to Ukrainian folklore began long before the current war. As a teenager, she kept diaries. The following excerpts from her diary are voiced by someone else.
December 27. This is the best winter of my life. Today was our second and biggest concert. I feel like a real rock star.
That sense of youth, of possibility, vanished quickly. After the bombing began in February 2022, Lisa and her family were forced into a basement shelter.
We prayed and wept, asking God not to start a war. But it was too late. The war had already come to our home.
By March, Mariupol was encircled.
I don't understand why they want to destroy us. I feel very sorry for the children and the newborns. Why do they deserve this?
When her home was destroyed, Lisa walked 17 kilometers with a guitar on her back, trying to escape the city. At one checkpoint, she encountered Russian soldiers. They offered sweets and canned food. Some people cried with gratitude. Kindness layered over coercion. Soon after, she was taken to refugee camps in the Donetsk region, sleeping on cardboard and rags, surrounded by wounded people. Her escape from deportation was organized by a network of volunteers operating across borders. Lisa now lives in Germany. The war is no longer around her, but it has not left her. Lisa says her experience of abduction showed her how fragile freedom is, and how quickly a human life can be reduced to fear and uncertainty. At the same time, she says it showed her the power of solidarity. Even in the darkest moments, people can choose to protect one another. For Lisa, displacement is not just personal. It's historical.
80% of all our folklore genre is singing about how you're homesick and how you hate to be a part of your hometown, because through the history Ukrainians was deported. We couldn't stay at safety and just live our lives.
When the full-scale invasion came, Lisa says it took more than her home.
Until the war, I felt like super harmonized with all the world and all the people around. I was so kind, I was so happy. I was playing in music every single day. I couldn't spend a day without playing music. And I felt so much interest in life. And when all the things happened, and even when I ran away from my occupation and from deportation, and I fell sit to look around and wondering what happened to me, I realized that they took something more than my home and my heart or my homeland. They took something that was lighting up everything around me, because I don't feel like I need it anymore, because they took something that made sense of all of it.
Trauma, explains Mariška, often arrives not as memory, but as silence.
It's political project. I always told that this is activism. It's going to tell people what's going on right now and that what needs most attention. It's actually what our ancestors who play bandura and kobza in a previous historical time did. They play on the squares and on markets to tell people what's going on right now.
Historically, those truth tellers were punished. In 1930, Soviet authorities executed Ukrainian folk musicians en masse, recognizing the danger of songs that carried news, memory, and identity. Daughters of Donbas revives that tradition deliberately.
Can you imagine the voices of our ancestors that holding everything that they lived through for 1,000 years? So this is a voice of our protection, of our defense, of our powerful. This is our weapons that we're able to use on now times.
For this project, Mariška searched for poetry that could speak to the stolen children. When none existed, she wrote it herself. But neither she nor Lisa believes in forcing children to relive trauma for the sake of narrative.
I will not ask them about anything. I will ask them what are they dreaming about? What are they feeling right now? How their life looks like before everything started. I think most interesting about them as a humans than like tell me your traumatic story. No, it's too fresh right now. It's why I'm not even trying to look for these kids and not traumatize them over and over again. I remember the story that I sang a lullaby in an abandoned train station in Donbas. I was standing at the empty hall. It was like singing quietly because acoustic was so good there. So I was singing lullaby like to myself. And then like one soldier came out and he was standing quietly and then listening that and crying. He says like, Marichka, I didn't know you were a singer. So, and then I found later that he was killed by Russians in a month after that. And I realized that was the last song I sang to him. The last song he heard in his life was my lullaby.
For Mariška, performance is inseparable from lived experience. For Lisa, it can open wounds, but remaining silent feels worse.
I'm not doing it for a hype. I'm not doing it for fun. I do it for my story, to share it with the world, to ask the world to not turn around about it, because not everyone could say so many people is dead, so many people is deported, and they are still silent. Time is a medicine. Step by step, by learning new instruments, I'm preparing my interests again. But I'm not in the teenage anymore. It's something way different. It's like more adult thing. This purity of a teenager is gone.
Daughters of Donbas has gained international attention. The group have just completed a tour of the UK and will perform this year in Australia. And in April, they will present the program in The Hague, the city where the International Criminal Court has issued an indictment against Russian President Vladimir Putin over the alleged abduction of Ukrainian children. In concert halls across Europe, audiences often leave in tears. But as Lisa explains, this project is not asking for grief alone.
I want them to help us. I want them to help anyone else, but I don't want to listen how sorry they feel for me, how it's terrible. I know that it's terrible.
And Mariska is clear about what she wants this project to achieve.
Empathy leading to the action. And this is a thing that can change the world.
The songs of Daughters of Donbas do not offer closure. They insist on memory and on listening until the stolen children come home. For DW, this is Brendan O'Shea in Berlin.
Daughters of Donbas has a film and an album coming out later this month. More information via their Facebook page, link in the show notes. I'm Kate Laycock in Germany. You're listening to Inside Europe.
I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. We're with The World, Public Radio's leading global news program.
We cover the biggest news events developing every day and give you the context you need to make sense of them.
And Carolyn, I also like our smaller stories, tales of discovery and human kindness, things that make us laugh.
Stories that kind of shrink our world and make us feel more connected.
Subscribe and listen every weekday to The World.
The Winter Olympics officially gets underway at Milan Cortina this weekend. The Ice House is now renamed the Winter House because, as a result of events in the US, this is the first Winter Games ever where ice has a bad reputation. That, however, is not our story. Our story is two Slovenian siblings who've already been breaking records in Slovenia's national sport, ski jumping. Will they be able to make Winter Olympic history too? Guy Delorne met up with them to find out more about their passion for leaping into the void.
If you want to know how much ski jumping means to Slovenians, you have to come to Planica. This is the sport's ultimate venue, close to the Kranjska Gora ski resort. It's where Slovenians created an even more extreme version of the event, and they called it ski flying. Tens of thousands of people make the pilgrimage to Planica every year to watch the climactic World Cup event of the season. But this year, all the anticipation is for the Olympics, because right now, Slovenia can boast the best male and female ski jumpers in the world.
That's actually the first year for me to do the Olympics. Previous years I wasn't so in the shape when it comes to Olympics, but now I really look forward to Olympics this year, and I have the focus to manage a gold medal there.
Domen Prejoc is the men's world record holder and runaway leader of this season's World Cup competition, winning 11 of the last 15 events.
Actually, it's like #1 sports in Slovenia, and lots of people watch it, lots of people recognize it. Even when you go down the street, people are quite happy to see you. So I have this fire in me doing this. That brings out the best of me.
I mean, this is a season for the ages. How are you feeling?
On one hand, you feel blessed. On the other hand, you feel like, yeah, I'm doing something right. It's just that amazing, fuzzy feeling that you want to keep it going. And on the other hand, you need to keep the focus, because the results are the result of all the things you've done up to this point.
Slovenia's Olympic medal hopes don't just rest with Domen. Remarkably, the top female ski jumper in the world is none other than his younger sister, Nika. She's only just out of her teens, but she's already won the overall World Cup title twice, as well as jumping further than any other woman in history. Olympic gold is the next target.
That's one of my biggest dreams since childhood.
And how far do you think you can go, Nika? Because I think, am I right in saying it's 234 metres? Is that your record? How much further can a human being go?
Yeah, actually, I went 2 meters more. I hope to jump at least 2 meters more or even more.
That was the sound of one of the world's best ski jumpers taking off at more than 87 kilometres an hour on a practice jump at this ski jumping centre in Kran. The ski jumpers of Slovenia really are the best in the world.
I think that we have a history, long history, especially from Planica. We know that the first jumps over 100 meters and 200 meters were in Planica, and I think that this tradition continued and people got in love with ski jumping.
Robert Hergota is the head coach for the Slovenian men's elite ski jumping squad.
To be an elite level, it takes more than just training. It takes more than just physical training. You have to have also mental training, and you have to have that something extra, but nobody else can provide. It's in, I would say, in the genes.
So which parts of the body are you using most?
I would say the head. I would say ski jumping is similar to golf. The more you want to hit the ball, the less you will hit it. So basically it's a motion thing. You have to go with the flow, and also I would say be aggressive but be relaxed.
Starting young is the key. Slovenia actually has a special high school for ski jumpers, but the training starts much earlier than that.
I have 8 years old when I start, and you go step by step. One ski jump hill to the another one, the bigger one, and then you just used to this feeling that you're not scared.
Nika Vodan was the overall Women's World Cup champion in 2021.
It's really special feeling in the air, because you feel this feeling of flying a little bit, special on the big hills. And what's also special is this, that you're feeling incredible, and that's the most important.
The really big buzz is all about the Winter Olympics. The Slovenian media are talking up the idea of taking home multiple gold medals from Milan Cortina, and with men's team and mixed team events, as well as 2 individual events apiece, there are multiple chances for Domen and Nika Prejoc to win. Naturally, they've been chosen as Slovenia's flag bearers for the opening ceremony, following in the ski tracks of their older brother Peter, who received that honour at the last Olympics. Domen says there's been a lot of hard work behind the family success.
It seems like a fairy tale from the outside. The thing is, maybe when we see each other each day and in the summer and see that everybody's working, and maybe the work ethics from the father and mother, it happens to be that we are brother and sister succeeding, and it's a real privilege to do that.
For everyone else in Slovenia, it's just a thrill to watch the remarkable Prejoc siblings at the height of their powers. Now they're just hoping to hear the country's national anthem multiple times at the Winter Olympics. Guy Delorme, DW, Kran, Slovenia.
And with that, we hit our fall line. Time to loosen the bindings and quit the piste. This programme was produced by Laura Kabelka and me, Kate Laycock. Our technician was Lucy Krupp. Special thanks to Ziad Abu Sleiman and Maya Schönwand. Inside Europe comes to you from DW in Bonn.